yours truly, Dr. Tammie Harris, with Mindset to Millions. Oh my word. Every week on Monday nights, I'm bringing you some awesome guests. I'm bringing you some people who have massive impact that's going to help you get to your next Mindset to Millions. Tonight, it is broken, bound, but becoming healed. A broken, bound, but becoming healed mindset. So get ready, get set, let's go, let's do it. Thank you all for joining in with me every week. We have over 400,000 listeners in 20 plus countries, and we always coming in hot. We always have something good to say, and we are super excited that you're joining us. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to someone who's doing the dang thing. She's making it happen. Our very own Brandy Nicole. Brandy, come on up to the stage, darling. Brandy, somewhere around here.
Hello. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm so happy. Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but
Thank
for
you
some
so much for
reason,
having me. I'm super excited to be here.
awesome. Let's see, can we see you, Brandy? Hold tight. The good thing about technology, when it's good, it's
Okay.
good, but when it's not good, it's not good. So hold tight. I hear you, but I'm trying to make sure I can see you. My engineer, Miss Parker, if you can text us and let us know if Brandy is in the screen, that would be perfect. That would be perfect. But this woman, I'm going to introduce her while she's coming on. I'm going to introduce Brandy while she's coming on. Brandy is awesome at what she does. She is recognized as one of the most empowering, engaging, and enthusiastic voices in motivational speaking, mental health advocacy, and trauma recovery. Yes, I said a mouthful. In so many words, she's prominent in what she does. She's passionate. She's a keynote speaker, certified trauma recovery coach, leading authority in mental health advocacy. Man, listen, I got some questions for her because, we're all walking through journeys of trying to become unbroken, unbound, and to become healed. And she got a wonderful conference that she's going to share with us, a summit. She's going to talk to us about that a little bit later. She's leveraging over 10 years of military experience. And I'm telling you, everything that she puts her hand to, she thrives. She's on top of her game. She knows who she is, why she's in the earth. Her calling is very sure. She's worked with bipolar disorder, alcoholism, PTSD. I mean, you name it. I'll let her share a little bit more. She's a warrior. Okay, how about that? She's a warrior. I mean, she have unique leadership styles to help people move from where they've been to where they're trying to go. Brandy, welcome to our
Yes.
platform, darling.
Thank you. And thank you so much for that phenomenal introduction. I appreciate it. I do. Super excited to be here tonight. Super excited and definitely walking in my calling to help individuals, women, men get to a place of healing is my passion. And it's one that I know from a personal standpoint as well. I wouldn't be standing here today if I hadn't had a journey of healing myself.
Wow. Wow. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Tell us maybe one or two things that we may not even know about you. I didn't read your whole bio, but tell us a fun fact about you, Brandy.
A fun fact about me, my favorite animal is dolphins. I absolutely love them. I say in my next life, in my older life, I should say, I would love to be one of those trainers, dolphin trainers that's in the Shamu shows, flipping and dipping with the dolphins. They bring me so much joy. So that is one of my favorite things. I love to travel. I absolutely love to travel, want to see every place that God has made on this earth. I would love to visit at some point or another. So traveling is my release. Traveling is actually a piece that helped me begin my healing journey. And so it means a whole great deal to me because I started doing solo vacations. That is what actually got me started in my healing journey. So traveling is very, very near and dear to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And one of the things that she and I both share in common is the love of Africa. We talked about our own
Oh, yeah.
personal experiences being in the motherland. And I think that's what established our friendship, Brandy.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Africa is absolutely me. It's for me. It's a piece of me now. I had the pleasure of going for the first time back in 2021, right during COVID. And it was absolutely life changing. So I love Africa, everything about it. Can't wait to
Awesome.
get back.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, we're going to jump right in. And as I shared with my audience earlier, thank you so much for joining in. It looks like we had a little technical difficulty, so I may not be able to talk to you in the chat tonight, but jump in the chat. We want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Brandy, tell us a little bit, your theme of the conference coming up and your theme when I even met you at Michigan State last year was broken, bound, and becoming healed. That's been a theme that I've heard you talk about so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to us when you say broken and bound in the context of trauma, talk to us a little bit about that. I think I know what it means, but when you're sharing this platform and trying to get people to heal and to be recovered, what does that mean to be broken and bound?
Yeah. So from a trauma standpoint and context, and as it applies to my platform, broken can be any dynamic, any situation, any event that has taken place in your life that has kept you in a depressed state, an angry state, an inconsistent state, an over emotional state, or an under emotional state. Those oftentimes are signs of brokenness. And in our brokenness, sometimes we don't even understand that with our trauma, we get ourselves bound. Sometimes our trauma bounds us spiritually because we go into covenant with certain spirits. Sometimes staying in our trauma keeps us bound in that depression. And so for me, my platform is broken, bound, but becoming, because I'm talking about always becoming your better version of self after your past trauma. Right. And so you may have been a broken individual at one point. You may even have been bound. But once you recognize that, you tackle that, who are you becoming outside of that is what we want to focus on. Becoming is a pieces thing because we're not going to give energy to the broken pieces of us or the bound pieces. We're going to get delivered from those things. And then we're going to bloom into who we're becoming after trauma. And becoming can be anything that you set your mind to. It could be becoming your better prayer warrior, having a more consistent prayer life. It could be becoming more confident in yourself. It could be becoming your better entrepreneur, your better speaker. It could be becoming your better Christian. Anything that you see yourself becoming, I want you to work on that intentionally by tackling the things that has broken you and kept you bound prior to.
Mm. Wow, this is interesting because I'm thinking about my own personal life and some of the trauma that I have experienced, and at certain intervals didn't even know it was trauma until later, until I got away from it or out of it, or I grew up, as a child, certain things that was happening in my world and in my life, I didn't even know it was trauma. What got you into this work? What made you realize the importance of being in a work that helped people move from brokenness and being bound to being whole and healed?
It was me going through my own personal journey of confusion, of brokenness myself. And after 2 divorces, I finally took a real good look at healing. Because what I realized is by the time I had my second divorce, I had suffered so many traumatic things, but never taken the time to actually address them. And what people often do is brush things things under the rug. They think because they haven't talked about it or it has happened 20 years prior that they are healed from it. Oh, that's not bothering me. That's not interfering in my day to day. And what I realized during my healing journey is it still was showing itself present in the decision makings, my choices in men, how I parented my children. But because I had not tackled it and faced it head on, I was still broken and I was still bound by it. And the results were still the same results. So I could open up a different door, but I was still receiving the same results. And so when I decided to take a healing journey of myself, of my own, after second divorce, I said, let me go back. It's time for me to start from scratch. And I made a very intentional decision to go from scratch. So I said, let me just start back to when I was a child. And the question I asked myself, and I challenge my clients to ask themselves when they start their journey of healing, is when was the last time you were the most happiest? And when I thought about that question, it was back in my childhood years. So that's where I went back to. And I began there and I worked my way up. So it's almost like, and you heard people talk about that inner child, you have to go back so that that inner child that was broken can grow up to the adult person that you are now. Because a lot of times when we get what I call trauma magnets, you all in society may know them as triggers, we sometimes resort back to that child behavior, create or start when the trauma began. Go back to that same behaviors that you had back when.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, and when I think about what you're saying, and even myself, going through life and the processes and the journeys of life, coming to a conclusion and thinking deeply, when did I not feel the trauma? When did I feel the safest? And then, like you said, going back to your childhood, I've never heard anyone put it that way. Going back to my childhood in a time where I felt the safest and going from there, that's very powerful because it gives us an opportunity to be healed over time. I've even spent time talking to my younger self, based on what I know now versus what I did not know then, comfort the little girl that was lost, confused, and then the teenager, the adult, and so forth and so on. So what are some of the common signs? I know you mentioned for you, but for most people that they may be experiencing trauma or needing healing. What are some of the signs? What would that look like?
Oh, there's so many. Unfortunately, there's so many, but a lot of times it could be depression. Depression is the biggest one that we often see, but sometimes is the most overlooked. So depression can show up in many different ways in people. Depression can show up in silence. It can show up in inconsistency, lack of motivation, sleeping a lot. But also we can talk about responses like I mentioned. Some people are alcoholics. Some people who indulge in work to be facing, indulge in being busy. So dealing with their internal, people laugh a lot. I can oftentimes say there's something they're hiding from. They laugh at everything. Every response is laughter. That is a coping mechanism also, that they're hiding something that they are really feeling, but the only mask that they are comfortable in is to laugh it off. So there could be so many different signs that there is something traumatic going on with someone that people just miss. Unfortunately, people miss.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I agree with that because even when you talk to people who, got lots of comic relief, they will tell you that they were funny because they were trying to hide the pain or make their mama laugh because their mama was in an abusive situation or, be the class clown because they were actually experiencing abuse at home, whether it was physically or sexually. So that's just very true. I've heard
Yeah.
that a lot. Yeah.
It goes
Wow.
it goes in even the other side too, because sometimes people will lash out in a negative way, meaning they will do bad things. Children sometimes, especially, will lash out in a negative way. They do bad things because they want your attention, but the only way they feel like they can get it is if they do something bad. bad, not good. And so when you transfer that into adulthood, it looks, oh my goodness, now we're talking jail time, in and out of prison. We're talking a whole bunch of number of things, because they look at coping as doing something. I want love and attention, but the only way I think I can get it is if I do something bad.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
Yeah.
some people, they, whether it's positive attention or negative attention, one of the things that I used to share as a family preservation specialist, and we, through juvenile justice, we would go into the homes of young children who were, they were underage, so they couldn't get charged as adults, and we would try to work with the families, and we would see like a lifestyle of crime in one family, and the younger child who was now in the system, we saw that they didn't get a lot of attention. Like they started acting out, they started committing crimes to get some attention, even though it was negative
Yeah.
attention.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And that sometimes can go back to a childhood. That was the only way that they got attention from their parents. So that's what they
Mm-hmm.
grew to know, as a way to get attention. That was the only time their mother or father paid them any attention, was if they did something bad. Otherwise, it's go to your room. I'm busy. I'm doing so. So they develop that pattern of bad behavior, negative behavior,
Mm-hmm.
when it's
Mm-hmm.
really a cry for love. I just want some love and some attention. Someone pay attention to me.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. Got it, got it. So, what are the first steps for someone if they want to take the first steps? What should they do if they want to start the healing process after trauma?
Yes. So the first step, is acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge that there is a trauma that has happened in your life, which is very hard for people. I mean, again, most people don't like to admit the bad things that has happened. They like to erase it. They like to shoo it under the rug, so to speak. And the thing with that is, as long as you continue to push it under the rug, you are continuously adding on more
Mm,
trauma, more boundness, more spirit, more energy to that bad trauma, right? And it's just going under the rug. So what happens when you consistently sweep dirt under the rug? You can hide it instead of throwing it away and tackling it. It's going to get lumpy and bumpy. And then what happens? You're going to get unleveled and you're going to fall over. And so that's the same thing it is with our trauma.
mm,
People who don't acknowledge the trauma for years and years and years eventually fall over in some capacity. And so the first thing, you have to get to a place where you're 100% honest with yourself. This is very hard to do, like I said, when you're dealing with trauma, because a lot of shame sometimes goes with it, guilt,
mm,
insecurities, and it's just hard for people to tackle those hard pieces of themselves. But that is the very first step that is key, to admit out of your own mouth, hey, this happened to me. This happened to me, and I feel this way about it. Rather than trying to keep it together, acting like you have it all together, acknowledge. You can't heal what you won't admit. And
mm.
and that is the very, very first step, is being authentic with yourself, because you put on a mask and put on the mask for so long. You faked it. We live in a society where being honest and real is not the way to go. They
Yeah, it's
put
not
on the
popular.
facade. Yeah, it's not popular anymore. Put on the facade, put on the mask, make it seem like you have it all together when you're dying in the inside of yourself. So my first challenge to people is to simply be authentic in this moment. Don't worry about anybody else, but for yourself, learn who you are to the core of you. That includes your trauma, and acknowledge it. You have to admit it.
I love that. I love that. And I know we can go on and on about why we, as a people, all people cross board, but I think, African Americans, I think I was the first generation in my family to get therapy. Like, I don't remember an uncle or aunt, a cousin, a mom or a dad or a sister. I don't remember anybody getting therapy until I started therapy, and I started talking about I'm in therapy and encouraging them to get therapy. And I know it's this old thing that we used to say, what happens in this house stays in this house. What happens in this family stays in this family. But I think it's killing us. I think it's killing a lot of people. And I'm very careful with my words. Let me change that. I
Yes.
think it has impacted us greatly to not get the help that we need. We're not dying. We're going to live. We're going to flourish. But have you came across in your work and coaching with clients where people have a hard time sharing because of how they was raised and told what happens in this house stays in this house?
Absolutely. I see it every day. And like you, it's a statement that I wish never was born and given so much fertilization in our culture, because it has kept so many people bound. And this is where we're talking about the spiritual piece of being trauma. Word curses are powerful. And I'm glad you corrected your words there, because words are powerful and people don't understand the amount of power that is in their words. And when you do things like that, how much of that trauma are you keeping and passing on from generation to generation because of the word curse of what goes to be mindful. That trauma is not only things that has happened to us physically and personally, but it's things that has happened to other people too, that we may have, or we may have developed. And I talk very, very heavy in generational curse because it is a big part of trauma as well. Something your grandparents did could be affecting you today, and you'd have no idea because they've gone into covenant with a spirit that has now caused you trauma, and you have no idea where it comes from. But I'm trying to get, during my program, I educate you. We go to the foundation of things, the core. So a lot of people like to focus and stay on the surface. They give me just a little. No. I'm going to make you dig deeper because I need to know what's in the core of you. And what I mean by that, a house can be pretty. It looks very pretty on the outside. You go to the neighborhood, all the houses look good. But what does the foundation look like? Is it brick, or is it something that's going to blow over as soon as the wind blows? So I need your foundation to be sturdy. And so we tackle, when we talk about being broken and trauma, I also tackle very heavily the spiritual pieces, word curses being one of them. And so, yes, people like to minimize what they tell me, or they'll tell me just a little bit, thinking that they are giving enough when they're not giving me anything. And as a coach, that's my job. I'm going to coach you and ask you those questions that's going to bring all of that up out of you. So then now I can determine where this started from, because like any flower, you can chop off the head and it'll grow back. We need to go down deeper and get to the very root of things and kill it there, shed it there.
You know, I'm looking in the chat and I want to say, welcome to the folks who have joined in. Contessa, good to see you on tonight. Ronnie, Marla, thank you so much for joining. Marla says, this is so true, Brandy, what you're sharing. Contessa says, hey, music, good to have you on tonight as well. Contessa says, you can't heal what you can't admit. She says, what you're sharing is so good. So I think everybody is just in agreement with what you're saying, because what you're saying is so true. And you're sharing with us, how you as a trauma coach can help guide someone through their healing journey. Because I think a lot of times, we have fitness coaches, we have medical doctors, we have therapists, we have mindset coaches, I have about 4 or 5 coaches that help me with different things. I think we have seen in time past some of these other opportunities, like a trauma coach or a mindset coach or even a therapist. Like, that's a luxury. Like, who has money to do that? But what's the value, even in the work that you're providing? I know some of your students, some of your clients. I've been on big stages with you speaking. I've heard some of the testimonies. What have you seen some of the value that people have had in having a trauma coach help them through the journey?
Oh my God, absolutely, and it's unmatched because the freedom that you receive once you do the work is invaluable. The person that you realize you are after realize not only how you develop mentally, but spiritually, physically, because my program actually we do tackle. I do it through a very unique process of fitness. And so by the end of the program, you are not only tackling your trauma, you're going to get fit in the same breath of that, but you're also going to get free spiritually. And so when I tell you the testimonies are amazing, when someone comes to me and says, because of you, I recognize that there's a pattern, a generational curse on my family. We've all been sexually molested. And now I can be the generational curse breaker. And I've broken that so that my child doesn't go through it. Now I know and I can pay attention to the signs. It's absolutely invaluable to me. So when you think about your healing and when you think about investing in anything else that you put your money into, what would you be willing to pay for your freedom mentally, for your freedom spiritually? For your freedom emotionally? What price are you willing to pay for that? For someone to help you get there. And once you learn these skills, you can take it for a lifetime. So when I tell you it's invaluable, I've never felt so great in my life because I didn't have to put the mask on anymore. Now I can stand before you in my natural everything, and I don't have a problem expressing myself. If something bothers me, I can speak it. I can own that. And I'm not ashamed. There's nothing anybody can say about me that I'm not willing to say myself. That freedom alone, that there's nothing holding me hostage, no trauma is keeping me bound and shame is priceless. And so for those that are hurting, what is the value you're willing to pay to discover how to get out of that mental capture, brokenness bound, the chains that have kept you captive for so long? How would you like to be freed and get to your authentic self so that you can attract what you prayed for? And that goes with anything: abundance in finances, abundance in relationships, abundance in just pure joy, knowing what makes you happy. What is the price you're willing to pay for that? Because the freedom is invaluable. It just is amazing. And I love when I get the testimonies when people have done the work. Oh,
Brandy, when you think
uh-oh.
about self-care, talk about self-care and the benefits of it.
Okay. You kind of went out for a second, but I heard the end of that question, and I believe you're asking me about self-care and the benefits of self-care.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So self-care is
Yes.
vital. Okay. Self-care is vital. And when you're talking about broken pieces of you, a lot of times we lose that ability. We don't know what it means to put ourselves first. We put everybody else first. We are so worried about the opinions of other people and pleasing other people because we're in a broken state that we forget to do our own self-care. So that is actually part of my course. Now, once we've done all of the digging, all of the grunt work, learning to love yourself is a very vital part. Start that with small steps. I mean, it could be anything like taking yourself out to dinner once a week by yourself. And so during my program, I oftentimes challenge my clients to do just that. I need you to step outside the box. This week, I need you to one, celebrate yourself. This is part of self-care, celebrating our wins. It doesn't matter how big or small. And it doesn't really matter what it is. We live in a society, again, where we think celebrations can only come when it's something bold, bright, brilliant, big. No, when you're going through your healing journey, if you got to a place where, for those that may have a suicidal ideation, that I didn't think about suicide this week. I want you to celebrate it. I want you to
Yes.
celebrate you, celebrate your win, right? And I oftentimes give the suggestion to do a star board. What is the star board? You have a board where you're going to put a star for every time you do something that you normally would not do. It doesn't matter how big or small. Then you start to see those stars on this board, and you see how the growth is happening. You can then begin to love those little bitty pieces of yourself, which then elevates you into a whole and celebrating yourself. Then we want to explore, take it a step further. Now I want you to go out and celebrate. But when you go out, I encourage you to do something that you normally would not do. So do something outside the box. Would you normally go to the movies by yourself? If not, do that. Get comfortable in your own skin and do something you normally wouldn't do, right? You're tackling two things. You're getting comfortable in who you are and spending time and loving yourself, but you're also facing a fear. Fear has always come and been abound peace for those that have been broken. They get fearful of something. They're fearful of their abuser. They're fearful of judgment. They're fearful of rejection or abandonment. So now what we're doing is we're facing a fear. So that way, fear is no longer an option because I can walk and take baby steps and go out, and just a small fear of going to the movies can now become ease and comfort and finding peace in those things. So that small task of creating a star board and practicing some self-love and just taking it one step at a time eventually grows into things like me traveling alone, solo, something I never would have done, never went by myself, let alone again to be my oasis to my healing. Now, hey, give me a solo trip any day. I'm okay. I love it because that was where I connected the most with myself, with God.
Yeah. That is awesome. Do you think it's important too that we talk to other people that we know, like, and trust about our struggles, a safe place about some of the trauma? I know, of course, having a trauma coach and maybe a therapist or mindset coach, however you do it. But one of the reasons why I asked, because we walk around, a lot of people, women especially, we have a lot to carry. We have a lot of people that depend on us and we support. But a lot of times we're supporting more people than they're supporting us. What's the value in making sure that we have safe places like friendships that we can say, yeah, I am struggling. Yeah, the kids are acting weird, or this is happening, that is happening. Is there value in that?
There is, but it depends on, in my opinion, it depends on the staging of your healing. And the reason I say that is because this is such a vulnerable place. You even the people you think you can trust with this type of information and this type of emotion can't handle it. Because in all honesty, we oftentimes build soul ties with people. We're only friends because we share the same trauma. We're only friends because we share the same trauma response. And so when you get to healing, you're going to look different to them. They're not going to understand that side of you because you have a trauma bond. That is why you're so close now. They are close to the trauma phases of you. And so when you start to heal and you start to move different, they're going to look at you a little differently and or develop an envious spirit towards you because they wish that they could get to that spot. So it's kind of hard when you start talking about that support system that's outside of a coach or in that capacity. And so I say that to say the beginning stages of your healing, in my experience, in my clients' experience, is best to do it solo in the beginning stages until you've healed some, build up that discernment to be able to see who's going to be truly supportive with that information and not throw it against you, not use it against you later, not, judge you for it and make your trauma worse. But I want you to think of it like this: in surgery, right? we have to prepare. First of all, we go into a pre-op. You have to go in for pre-op. You got to get your blood tested. You got to make sure your weight is right. They check those vitals to make sure that you are going to be prepared for surgery, right? So we check you. We do a check before you even get there. You're solo. You got to make sure you're in alignment to heal, and then then you should be praying over the physician that's going to be operating on you. But when you go under sedation, which is going to be your time with God during your healing journey, you're by yourself. There's nobody there. There's nobody there. And so you're in a sedated, silenced state. So you are quiet. You're hidden. You are broken, but you're hidden. He's protecting you. You're going through the surgery quietly. Nobody's in the room with you. And then once you wake up, you go through your healing, right? You go through your recovery. So now you got to wait till you can't get back to the gym and go straight to doing sit-ups or this or that or moving or running. You got to crawl before you walk type of thing. You got to go through a recovery phase. And so that's very important to get through that phases, those steps before we kind of invite certain people into our journey. Now, if you know them for a fact, they're going to have a good heart. They're going to be able to do your healing journey. Absolutely. But you have to have that discernment to know who and when. And if I had to break it down, I'll break it down to a solo session first until you get a little stronger and then invite your outsiders that you can trust. But remember, there's always trauma bonds. You'll develop, you're going to lose people as you heal. You're going to lose people because they were bound and attached to you because of the broken pieces of you, not because of the healed ones.
Yes. I tell you, the way you explain that's why you're the trauma coach. I mean, literally, because I wouldn't have never looked at it quite like that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, even if you look at it just in the natural, if you're climbing at one level and a friend may not be, they may start feeling a certain thing about that alone, and it has nothing to do with trauma. So just imagine if it's trauma, something so, painful and a journey and a process you got to walk through, depending on where they are with their journey, it can impact yours. And I love you talking about the trauma bond. Let's look in the chat. A couple of people are joining in and just sharing information. Marla said, this is good. This also reflects the need for more therapists that share our culture experiences so that people feel more comfortable sharing their personal business without being judged. So that's really, really good.
Yes.
And feel and understand you. Katessa said, peace is priceless. Rhonda, thank you. Dr. Rhonda's in the chat. Dr. Rhonda says, self-love is not selfish. And of course, in a lot of cultures, we're taught that we're supposed to be superwoman and, Wonder Woman and turn backward flips and not take care of ourselves. Katessa says, conquer fears and celebrate the small milestones. When you were talking about the starboards, I thought that was really good. She said she got it. Welcome, Angela. Thank you so much for joining us. She says, wonderful information. Yes and amen. So people are definitely tuning in and hearing all this goodness that you're sharing with us, woman of God. So we appreciate you. And I love you talking about generational curses and generational blessings. One of the things I was sharing with my 22-year-old, he did a study for us on wisdom, and he talked about Solomon, and he shared with me, he said, when Solomon asked God for wisdom, he asked for the principal thing, and a lot of other stuff came with that, money and opportunities and leadership. And what turned Solomon was when he started marrying wives of foreign gods that had foreign gods. And so he started building temples for their gods, and it just moved him away from his God-centered focus. And this was the key thing, though, that my 22-year-old said when he was teaching services to us on Sunday. He said the thing that stood out to him was God said to Solomon, because of your father David, David's heart was after God. He was a man after God's heart. Because of your father
Mm,
David, you will not see the curse in your lifetime, but your child will see it in his lifetime. So, the same way
mm,
David, because he was a man after God's own heart, he left a generational blessing from the standpoint Solomon, was given wisdom, and he was, he didn't experience in the earth the curse that he brought on his own family, that he brought on his offspring, but his son had to experience the curse. And so generational curses, word curses, things that we worship and that we honor that God does not honor, it impacts us and it affects us and it will take us away from our healing, more so than we even realize. So I guess a question
yeah.
I want to ask you, because you are a woman of faith, you're a trauma coach, you're international speaker, you do so many things, even in Africa, on different continents and so forth and so on. What would you say a typical healing process, um, what are signs that you're well again, or you're getting well, or you're
Mhm.
breaking the generational curses? What does that look like? You're on your journey, you're doing the work, but how do you know, okay, yeah, I am healing now?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good question. And so when you can get to a point, for those that may be depressed, when you find yourself energetic again and you're no longer suicidal or thinking of those things, you're motivated to get up. That's a good sign that you're going in the right direction. When you can talk about your trauma and not be ashamed or embarrassed or altered in any kind of way, that's a sign that you are free. I can speak on it. I don't have any shame in my game. I'm not laughing. When you get to a place where no matter what you feel, no matter what you want to question whether other people are going to like it or agree with you, that's another sign that you are on the right track of healing. You don't need their opinions. So those are some of the signs that will let you know I'm evolving, I'm changing here. And when you also can see if you are the generational curse, if you've been praying and you can start to see the change in your family bloodline, you can start to see the change in the behaviors of your children, you know your
Mm.
prayer is working. You know that you have broken the curse. And sometimes you don't get the luxury of seeing that, but you want to look at it. But the thing about it is you'll have the discernment to see it and know what that looks like. And you won't respond traumatically. When your response changes, you know that you are evolving and healing. What
Mm.
used to set you from a 0 to a 10 now doesn't even phase you. Oh, okay.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
evolving. So those are
Yeah.
usually some signs that your healing is working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think too that that was good, to add to that. I know myself just like you, I've gone through, a divorce and in a separation leading to a divorce. And one of the things that I realized for me when I knew I was healing was when I could talk about it and not just spaz out. I could talk about it and not be brought to tears like it just happened. Have you ever seen people speaking? They may be sharing their testimony or they may be speaking on a stage as a speaker and they're talking about some trauma, whether it was child molestation or abandonment issue or divorce or death of a spouse, and they just lose it. And when I see that sometimes, I definitely be prayerful, but I automatically know that there's some more healing that has to take place. And not that
Yes.
we, I think about, I have two children in heaven, Kayla and Jason. I can't say, it's been 20 years and 18 years now. I can't say that out of the blue some days grief, like a wave of grief may come, but I'm not like falling out and, just giving up on life like when it first happened, because I did the work. And you have to be willing to sit with the disappointment, sit with the fact that, yeah, that should not have happened to me. Or why am I getting a divorce? Man, that's not what I planned. The different things. I think for me, my healing has taken place in my acknowledgement, like you said in the beginning, acknowledge something had happened, and then allow myself to feel what I need to feel, and then moving forward, journaling, crying if I need to cry. One of the things that I realize as Black women, we don't need to be trying to be Superwoman.
Yes.
I mean, I'm Wonder Woman. I'll turn around and be Wonder Woman and put my hands on my hips in a minute. But when I need to take a knee and take a nap and drink some
Yes.
tea and meditate and pray and journal and call one of my good friends and cry or talk to my therapist, it's okay to have a therapist, right?
It's okay. Oh, it is definitely okay. And that is one of the biggest challenges is trauma in women specifically. We either lose all emotion or we have too much emotion. We're
Mm-hmm.
overindulged in it. You're either extremely emotional and you cry about everything, or you have lost all sense of emotion and you've forgotten how to smile. You've forgotten how to cry. You've gotten a hardened heart. And that is one of the biggest things that is a time a time consuming. And I'm not saying consuming in the bad way. Things take the back. Getting your emotions back. Have you lost it? Permission to break emotions. So when you want to, even you brought up, and I'm so sorry I lost. But even when you feel something for the loss of your children, and you should embrace that. It's okay to have a day or two or three or whatever you need. Take the time to do it. But it's those times in which you allow it to take over everything is when you know
Right.
that there's still some healing. But just a normal day of, yeah, I want to grieve about my children. Absolutely. Give yourself permission to do that. And it is absolutely okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to worry about what other people think. And that's the hard part about people who haven't healed. They still feel like they got to put it together. I have 3 steps, and I gave you guys the first one. I call it the AAA method. 3 A's. Acknowledge was the first one. Accept is phase 2 of that AAA process. And what does that mean? A lot of times we ask ourselves the question, why did this happen to me? And I get people to a place once they've done their healing to the place to kind of flip that question around. Because see, God chose you to go through that trauma for a reason. Now he's going to use you to help someone else get to that place of healing. So you change that question, why did it happen to me, to why not me? Why would I not be chosen to help someone else get through this trauma? Why would I not be chosen to actually heal from this trauma? And that way, it's like, oh, I'm special. Helping you. And then the A is accountability. How are you holding yourself accountable in your own? A lot of times we are what is called the victim, but you then become the victor and the oppressor in your own oppression when you don't choose to heal from your trauma. So you kind of keep yourself in that trauma longer than you had to, because you won't take time to get the healing that you need. You won't take the internal steps to break generational patterns and curses in your family. How are you keeping yourself accountable in your own pain? That is the AAA method. When you can get through those steps and answer those questions, you're getting to a good place to where you can continue the road.
Okay, thank you so much. In the chat, people are just chatting it up. This is so good. This is so good. People are saying, yes and amen. Healing is surgical. Contessa says I'm under sedation. On the backside of the mountain recovering. Girl, you better preach.
There you go.
Contessa, you need to do a whole sermon around that. We're going to put together a workshop for you. That is so good. On the backside of the mountain recovering. Ronnie says, great conversations filled with amazing nuggets. At times, we have to go under construction for ourselves, the secret closet, to let God have his way. Amen. Contessa said, woo, child, take a knee, take a knee. And Angela said, yes, it is okay. So yes, yes, yes. People are hearing you. Awesome. Awesome. And in our last 10 minutes,
Thank you.
yes, in our last 10 minutes, man, time has flown, but I have a few more questions I want to ask you. Um, Share with us one of the hardest life experiences you have had to walk through to find your healing, and how did you do it? Because what advice you're going to share and how you did it is going to help someone tonight who may be feeling overwhelmed or discouraged in their own healing journey. One of the hardest life experiences that you had to walk through, and how did you heal? How did you get through it?
Okay, definitely. So one of the hardest life challenges that I had to go through is I was raped at the age of 14 years old. Now, I also, prior to that, lost my father to the prison system. And so I grew up without my father. He was in prison. So for me, at the age of 14, being sexually violated, I anybody who's been sexually violated knows how hard that is to overcome. I had never dealt with it. Neither my mother or my 36 years old. The trauma. And so I it over 20 years, right? It shows in so many different ways. You know, I'm saying it showed itself because I hadn't dealt with it. And so when I tell you, one day after the second divorce, I said, I have to deal with this trauma. I have to go back to that girl and figure this thing out. What I did was I took my father, who is now out of prison, and we have a phenomenal relationship. He's my best guy, right? I took him to the location that it happened. And we stood outside of that location, and I told him word for word everything that happened that day. Everything that I remembered. And I released it right there on the spot, on the scene. One of the hardest things I had to do, one of the hardest things he had to hear. But that was the open door for my recovery. That was the open door for my healing. And slightly after that, I began to work out. I began to challenge myself physically to build a temple. And that's how trauma fitness, which is actually my business, was where I used it to help me tackle my depression. I was working my not only to do this result and began to define me to bond and have non-relational issues. The traumatic parts of life, own my hearts in the divorce and X, Y, Z on up to the latter. I was able to put all of that in a workout and tackle it in a way. I was able to grow weight. And then I I had just I had to get those boxing gloves in the room and fight. It's a door. I don't call my clients or survivor warriors because you get in intentionally the boxing glove. You say, "Hey, listen, you don't need over me anymore. I'm gonna sit in the press crying over this anymore." And so those are very bold ways to do the location. And he allowed me here. That is intentional.
Wow. I tell you what, lady, your heart. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing your heart. And yeah, I see there's technical difficulties. The internet is definitely unstable. So we see that. We see that. We're about to wrap up, but this is powerful, and I know people are getting so much out of what they could hear. Unfortunately, the internet is somewhat unstable, but this is good. I know, Brandy, you have something really big coming up. Can you share that with us? And I'm hoping that people can get that. I'm going to put the link also in the chat so people who may want to join in, they can join in. But you have, in our last 3 minutes, you have something great coming up the last weekend in the month. Talk to us about that. Okay, have we lost Brandy?
Yes. So my healing summit today. This is my healing summit is going to be April 27th in Atlanta, Georgia, and Georgia, again, this is what we're going to be able to get you from me, but you're also here. I'm an absolute amazing. And how you resources people can do and I'm looking to the big steps of healing. From the beginning and how it begins the steps.
Brandy. Okay.
Here to celebrate worship God and so much more. It's on sale. Coming, please. To go there. Amazing journey of healing. So, like I said, worship, activities, healing activities, and so much more. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. And Brandy, because we broke out some, I took a copy of the post from Facebook and I put it in the chat and shared with everyone about it so people can jump on your Facebook to see this information and get involved, be a part of what you're doing. So I did put that in the chat. I wanted to make you aware of that, okay? Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Brandy had so much good stuff to share, and I hate that our internet, I don't know what's going on, but the system is a little weird on tonight. So you may couldn't hear a lot of what she said in the end, but I want you all to go to this Facebook post that I added in the chat to take a look at what it is that she's doing. Ronnie said, "Thank you, Brandy." And this was a great conversation. Thank you, everyone who joined in. Please find Brandy online, Brandy Nicole. She is all over social media. She is becoming healing and health Summit on April the 27th. Please join her. It's going to be magnificent. So thank you again for joining us. We'll be back next Monday night, prayerfully with no technology issues. Maybe it was the eclipse that messed the technology up today. But thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for Brandy for being our special guest. We appreciate you. Thank you for being in the building. Everybody have a great night. Bye now.